She thought tonight would seal 3 perfect years. The villa was shawled in fairy lights, a satin banner flung across the marble foyer, "Happy Anniversary." Waiters moved like rehearsed choreography, glasses clinked. Clara stood in the center of it all, red dress, laughter clipped and bright, the kind of laugh that softened the air and made everyone orbit her like polite satellites. A pair of vintage sports cars gleamed on the drive. A glass case on the terrace held a set of earrings so expensive a single whisper of their price would send someone's pulse spiking. Ethan Miller was late. That should have been a small thing. A late executive, a calendar piled, a private jet delayed. But tonight, when Clara tilted her head and smiled at a speaker in her hand, Ethan's voice on the line, there was something else. A second voice, low and intimate, threaded through it. Not just a voice, affection. The room, full of influencers and classmates and people who lived by the social feed, heard it too. Heads tilted, phones raised. Clara's smile thinned for half a beat and then hardened. At the gate, a delivery van hummed toward the staff entrance. It was the kind of van you didn't notice in a night like this. Inside, a young woman wrapped in a cheap uniform wiped rain from a cardboard cake box, cheeks flushed with the cold and with nerves. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. She had been told, by a temp agency, by a dispatcher, by whoever takes these calls, that the job was a private anniversary drop. Nothing more. She had not been told the name on the invitation, the magnitude of the crowd, or that the woman waiting inside would be the last to believe her. Her name was Sophia Chen. She moves slowly, not because she's afraid, but because careful steps keep the breath level and the memory clear. Sophia had rehearsed this night in a dozen ways in her head. She'd convinced herself she could watch, document, and walk away. She'd imagined the revelatory moment being clean, one text, one screenshot, one live confession. Real life was not tidy. Real life smelled of perfume and spilled champagne and the metallic tang in her mouth when she heard the lines she recognized. Ethan's voice on Clara's speaker said, "Darling," and then the low woman laughed and said something that made Ethan's tone go soft in a way he had only ever gone soft with her. The laugh was the same laugh he used to carry home on the line in the small hours, the laugh that used to belong to the woman he pretended he loved. Sophia freezes with the cake box in her hands at the staff door. The tape on the box has her fingerprints. There's an order number. The gatekeeper gives her a look that is equal parts curiosity and disdain. Jessica, one of Clara's closest, sweeps past in stilettos, takes the center of the terrace like a coronation. Someone makes a toast. Cameras drift. "Who is that?" someone calls, half teasing, half demanding. The answer comes in a slow trickle. Ethan's scheduling, a private surprise, a late client. It is the kind of excuse wealthy people use the way other people use umbrellas. It keeps the weather of gossip at bay. Sophia steps inside, unnoticed at first. The staff door opens into a ballroom of glass and curated light. She walks like she's delivering a simple thing, a cake, a card, a signature. She has rehearsed the lines. Delivery for Miss Clara, order number 1172. She says them, and they sound small and brittle in the cavernous room. A waiter takes the box, without looking at her, his attention on the crowd. A friend, an influencer with lights in her hair, brushes her arm and laughs like royalty. Clara notices the cake only after the cake is set down perfectly in the center of the dessert table. Then she notices the woman who brought it. The laugh that had folded the room into a warm shape snaps. Clara's eyes cut across Sophia like a glance that could grade a person's paper and find it lacking. "Who let you in?" Clara asks, casual but with the sting of a thrown word. The question lands like a coin on marble, thin, loud. Sophia's voice is steady. There is a small tremor, but she keeps it to herself. Delivery, order 1172. "There's no such order," Jessica says, a smile gone sharp. "We would know." They set about unmaking her, polite dismissal, a tiny cluster of mocking whispers, the kind of humiliation that spreads with surgical precision in rooms full of people who profit from power plays. Someone suggests she took a wrong turn. Someone else jokes about scavenging. A man with a camera shifts closer. Ethan's voice buzzes again from the speaker in Clara's hand. "I'm on my way," he says. "Traffic." A woman answers him. That is not Clara. Sophia's hand tightens on the box. In the side pocket of her jacket, a phone vibrates. Messages, missed calls labeled with a familiar name. She fights a desire to take the device out and flood the room with proof. That would be unplanned. That would be something she couldn't control. Instead, she watches Clara's lips move, parsing the inflection the way a trained ear hunts for a note that doesn't belong. "You should go," Clara says to the delivery girl without looking at her, as if the girl were a stain. Sophia leaves, not because Clara's dismissal wounds, but because in the small space of her hand the cake box feels suddenly heavier than its weight. It contains layers, sponge and cream, yes, but memory and evidence as well. Then, from somewhere close to the entryway, a low, incredulous voice cuts through. "Ethan," it says, "you have some nerve." The speakerphone drops to the terrace floor with a delicate clink. Conversations reform around its sound. Someone picks it up. The low female voice is still there, even clearer now, and the room recognizes it for what it is. Not a client's assistant or a random colleague, but a familiar cadence of intimacy. Eyes dart. Phones come alive. Ethan walks in at last, tie slightly askew, face that public people wear when they want to look unbothered. He is handsome in an absolute way. The chin, the jawline, the magnetism that built his career. The kind of look that Twitter threads are made of. Tonight, he looks late and a bit flustered, and flustered is not what people expect. He takes in the room. He sees Clara standing with a drink, cooling her hand, the speaker in it like a talisman. He looks to the guest list, faces dignified, cameras ready, and then he sees Sophia's departure. For a second, his expression goes small, something like recognition, then effort. He shrugs off the breath that might have shown guilt. "Complications," he says to Clara, and that word is supposed to be enough. But complications aren't supposed to come with the sound of another woman's laughter threaded through them. Clara, for the first time since the chandeliers lit, has no smile to offer. Her fingers tighten on the speaker. "Who is she?" she asks him, in a voice that sounds less like a woman scorned and more like an accusation filed in public. Ethan's jaw moves. He reaches to the speaker as if about to take it, to unplug the sound. "It's nothing," he says too quickly. "It's nothing, Claire. It's business." The room holds its breath, because in a space like this, business is a verb with many meanings. It can be a boardroom, a merger, or it can be a private account for private favors. The word is elastic where trust is not. At the terrace edge, someone clicks a phone camera. The sound is small. It ripples across the marble. "She sounded like she called you honey." Jessica says it into the small crowd. Careful, intimate. The phrase lands like a small stone into a pond. Ripples. Sophia, a block away, hears it. She has retreated to a shadowed side garden, where palms sway and the birthday balloons are less conspicuous. She sets the cake on a low stone bench and does what she always does when a memory threatens to unspool her. She breathes. There is a file in her mind she plays to steady herself. She replays the voicemail from 2 nights ago. Ethan's tremor as he said an unguarded thing. The message from a mutual acquaintance that explained schedules and private dinners. A photo she found last week of Ethan at a sushi bar with a woman whose profile was enough to make her stomach drop. There it all is, in a neat, terrible row. Timing, tone, pattern. She also has something else she had not planned to use tonight. Not a piece of blackmail, not revenge. Just a document folded in her pocket, cold and legal and precise. It is a property deed. It is the paper that says who owns this villa. She had registered it months before, official, stamped. A precaution, she'd explained to herself, an assertion of autonomy in a world where titles do the heavy lifting. The deed laughs in the face of assumptions about who belongs where. If presented at the right time, it would be disruptive. If presented at the wrong time, it would look like a power grab. She thinks of all the ways she could deliver it: a press release, a lawsuit, a call to Sterling. Tonight, she thinks, is a chance to do one thing clearly: show the truth while there are witnesses who care about perception, not facts. Back inside, the terrace spins with gossip. Is she his... someone starts. Isn't Sophia his wife? Another asks across a camera screen. The rumor threads, instant and hungry. People love a scandal with a face and a timestamp. The camera's angle. Comments flood feeds. Ethan moves toward the crowd, palms open, the body language of a man who still believes in the power of a practiced apology. He reaches Clara, who does not move. "You need to cut this out," he tells her, voice low. "Please, not here." Clara laughs, not out loud, but in a way that cuts the air. "Not here?" she repeats. "You chose not here when you chose us. You chose apologies in private." An influencer climbs onto the fountain rim and narrates live, her followers multiplying like applause. "They're not even trying to hide it," she says into the camera. "Look at him, acting like the city is his, and none of this ever happened." Sophia has returned to the staff door. She could walk back in and present the deed. She could announce, loudly, to everyone that she owns this place. She could shock them into silence. Instead, she waits. She watches Ethan's face from the threshold, and the way it changes when Clara says, "We should tell everyone, don't you think?" Ethan finally pockets his hands and speaks. "Clara, please. It is a plea that wants to be private, but is broadcast. Don't make a scene." "Make a scene?" Clara says, teeth white with a certain kind of rage. "You hid us for months, Ethan. You hid her. Tonight, we celebrate you and your taste. Let me celebrate the one who enjoys it." "What is she saying?" someone asks. The tone is expectant. People are ready to assign blame and to record it. That is the real currency tonight, the footage. Sophia steps forward then, not because she wants to be seen, but because the visible world needs someone to remind it of what is actually true. A server jostles her accidentally. Someone spills a glass and it splashes at her shoes. A laugh that is meant for someone else lands on her like a stone. She opens her mouth, and her voice is small at first, but it grows. "I live here," she says. A beat. The sentence hangs. She holds the deed in her pocket like a talisman. The word "here" sounds both like a place and like a claim. Clara's expression breaks into something savage. "Who do you think you are?" she says. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what I do?" "You know exactly what I am," Sophia says. "You know the name on the registration. You know the signature." A camera lurches closer. Someone, always someone at these gatherings, asks for proof. The crowd leans forward. The feed viewers count in the thousands. Sophia pulls the deed from her pocket as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. It is not an accusation. It is paper. The corner of the document catches the chandelier light. Even from a distance, the embossed stamp seems to bite into the image. "What is that?" Clara laughs, but the laugh is threadbare now. "Forgery." "Show some ID," Jessica says, the accusatory reflex of a crowd raised on the idea that power requires spectacle. Sophia unfolds the paper. She opens it as if reading a recipe. "Sophia Lin Chen," she reads aloud, clear and plain. "Registered owner. Transfer recorded. Sterling Group notarized." The last name, Sterling, carries weight. The word reverberates through the terrace like a gavel. Mr. Evans, the villa's property manager, and a man who has hands in every file and an eye for signatures, freezes mid-step toward the bar. He takes the deed from her politely, because that is his job, and because laws exist separately from night gossip. He turns the page. His hands do not tremble. He reads the signature, compares it to past ledgers he keeps tucked in his memory. "This is in order," he says at last. "The registration is valid, the stamp is real." A murmur rises like surf. Clara's friends circle, voices sharp and immediate. "Forgery," someone insists again, because denial is cheaper than explanation. "How much did you pay her? Who is she?" "Who are you?" a young man hisses. The words are crueler than the others because they ask for identity in a public market where identity is made and unmade by what one owns. Sophia smooths her skirt. Her pulse is a clinical beat now. "I'm his wife," she says. For a moment, the air goes thin. It is the sort of silence heavy rooms pay attention to. Influencers tilt their phones. Ethan looks like someone who has been punched in the gut and is trying, in a social emergency, to present an alibi. "Sophia," he begins, and the name is instantly a contradiction in the mouths of people who thought they knew him. "His wife?" Clara says, and the question is mockery pulled taut. "Why would he?" "Why would he marry me?" Sophia finishes. There is no venom in the question, merely the exactness of a woman making room for an answer that will define the night. Someone in the crowd knows a law trick, a private check, a quick call, the tapping of an app. Eyes move between Mr. Evans and the deed and the faces, and the live stream counts. The camera's red dot continues to blink. Ethan steps closer to Sophia. Up close, he looks like a man whose skin was made to be lit and photographed. Up close, his hand shakes. "Sophia," he says, almost pleading. This is complicated." "Complicated," she repeats, with the same dry clarity that had made her wait. "Did you ever call her honey?" Ethan's face goes blank for a second and then folds into excuses. "I said it was business," he says. "You have to believe me." The crowd smells a fracture. People take sides the way someone chooses seats at a theater. For entertainment, for comfort, for spectacle. Cameras feed opinions into comments. Someone posts a clip, Ethan's voice, the other woman's laugh. Instant, shareable. People watch it, pause it, make their judgment. The night blooms into 1,000 verdicts. "Show me the documents," Clara says, the predator now assured of her prey. "If you own it, you won't mind a formal verification." "Do it," Mr. Evans says, professional now, pulling out his phone with an almost apologetic precision. He runs a quick check against the property management app, the one that shows transfers and timestamps. The room hums with expectation. A small sound like a pebble into a well, then a notification. Mr. Evans reads. His thumb drags, he squints. A silence unfurls like a curtain. "The deed checks out," he tells them. "You forged a deed," Clara snaps, certain in denial. "You think we won't check?" "Why would I do that?" Sophia asks quietly. "Why would I humiliate myself to be a delivery person at my own anniversary party?" The words hang. It's a perfect, terrible symmetry. The audience loves symmetry. He had one family in secret and another in public. He had a life that spilled into the night, and the truth now refused to be kept where it was convenient. Phones buzz. Ethan's pocket is hot with them. He steps back and fumbles, bringing a device up to his ear. He calls someone, an assistant, a lawyer, a friend whose voice will tell him how to fix a social rupture. On the line, he hears reassurance he wants. But phones have limits. They don't erase signatures. "8 million for the bottle," someone mutters, a joke with teeth in it. "Isn't that a little much to break tonight?" The remark is cruel and precise. Rich people monetize everything, even an accident. Clara's composure cracks as if a seam has finally given. "People, this is absurd," she says, loud enough for servers to stop and for the camera's red dots to pivot. "Sophia, if you're his wife, where have you been? Why are you pretending? Show us your ID." Sophia shows what she needs to show. She pulls her driver's license from her wallet, pale, above the line, a photograph against a neutral background, and holds it out like an offering. The name on the license matches the deed. Paper, digital registration, face. The crowd leans in like birds. The live stream picks it up and the numbers climb. Comments flash. Plot twist. He's done. Is this staged? The internet loves a scene that looks as though it were written for it. Ethan turns to the crowd, searching for an ally among faces he had assumed were his. There are a few who offer polite nods, the kind of equivocal support that keeps one's own name clean. But many do not. Reputation is a fragile thing with thin wire legs. Tonight, the wire trembles. "You're not married to me," Ethan says to Sophia suddenly, perhaps because saying it might make a lie true. His voice is excitable, defending a falsehood that has become habitual. "People need context. There are scheduling." "People need the truth," Sophia answers. Her voice is calmer now because nothing else in this life has ever been as clear as the papers in her hand. If you want context, ask the registrar. If you want proof, look at the stamps. But stop pretending the only people involved are me and my delivery uniform. Clara takes him by the elbow like a queen reclaiming an errant subject. "Ethan, handle this," she says. "Handle it now." He tries. He tries to make a transfer, to refuel her confidence with money the way men like him tend to repair accidents. It would be a cheap fix, an $8 million transfer to cover a broken bottle, a consolation for public embarrassment. The gesture is transactional, but in his mind, it is a bandage. He taps his phone, and for a second, the room leans to watch the numbers climb. He brings up the transfer app. He slides the confirmation. The screen blinks an error. "Not enough funds. Card declined." The words are small and lethal. A ripple of satisfaction runs through the corners of the room, a subtle, human response to the fall of an idol. Cameras blink. Someone chews the inside of a cheek. Ethan's hands go to his pockets. A flurry of calls, a whispered curse. "No," he says, more to his phone than to anyone. He tries a different card. Another block. His eyes flick to his assistant on the terrace. Mr. Evans raises an eyebrow. He had seen this before only in boardroom dramas where financial control was asserted with cold, decisive fingers. "Is your account frozen?" someone asks, not very quietly. Ethan forces a laugh that does not reach his eyes. "It's a technical issue," he says, hoping desperately that paperwork and logos can restore the narrative. Sophia felt a small, private victory flicker through her ribs at the sight. The public performance was important because the world only changes when witnesses claim it does. Her deed had changed that geometry. But there were other gears at work. Banks, power, people who did not want to be embarrassed. Clara's composure is a sharp blade. "What has he been paying you with?" she asks Sophia now, venom fused to curiosity. The room wants to see teeth. The crowd craves damage. "Where's your receipt?" Jessica calls. "Where's the transfer that keeps you comfortable?" The insinuation hangs. A wife in a delivery uniform must have been paid to perform a trick. The world grouped them into simplistic categories, because simple stories are easier to swallow. Ethan finally moves, as if to create a barrier between Sophia and the accusations. "Please," he says, an edge of insistence now. "This isn't the time." "Isn't the time?" Sophia repeats, and the sound is a razor. "Tonight is exactly the time, Ethan. Tonight, while you are among witnesses, seems like the only time you felt safe being two people." His mouth forms 100 apologies that never make it off the tongue. Instead, he reaches out as if to touch her, as if proximity could sew together the torn seams of his life. She flinches away. The motion is small but absolute. A woman in a silver dress records it all, the reaching hand, the flinch, the camera's lens hungry for a final frame. The footage will live. The footage will make an index, and that night will keep coming back in small clips with different captions. Sophia steps into the center then. She can feel the weight of every camera lens settle on her shoulders. There's a kind of power in bearing witness when one has been assigned the role of the betrayed. She looks at Ethan. She looks at Clara. She looks at the faces who have been vindicated by proximity. "You're under no obligation to believe me," she says, "but you are under an obligation to accept proof." Mr. Evans, who is a man of records and gray shirts, does something more than check the property app. He pulls out a slim folder from his jacket with database logs and timestamps and matches them against the deed's transfer history. The margin notes show a recorded date. The transfer was lodged long enough ago to be unquestionable. The property is hers, not a temporary claim. Clara's friends begin to whisper about fraud. There are always people ready to impute crime to women who disrupt their narratives. But the evidence is stubborn. It sits on the table like a tooth that cannot be extracted. In the crowd, someone whispers the name of a powerful woman, often spoken of like a specter in the city's corridors. A woman whose interventions are swift and final. Director Sterling. That name lands with a different weight. It is the kind of name that suggests not only money, but also a readiness to correct. People chant it softly to themselves, the same way citizens once used a bell to summon the king. A notification pings on Mr. Evans' phone. He reads it, frowns, and then looks up across the terrace. "There's been a request on the accounts," he says, not loud but precise. "A hold from Sterling Group." The word coldly rearranges the room. People who had been comfortable with an untouchable husband now look at him differently. He did not expect to be touched by a power he thought aligned with him. Ethan's phone clatters on the marble as he fumbles another attempt to transfer funds. His face drains. He says the word Sterling like a man who had been assured of an unlimited spigot and now hears a valve close. The cameras do not miss his face. The live feed swells. Comments erupt. Assets frozen? Is he broke? What's Sterling doing? "You can't freeze people's cards without cause," a man insists from the back, more to the idea of authority than to Ethan. Mr. Evans shakes his head. "Sterling can," he says, "and when they call, banks listen." Ethan's breath quickens. "Mom," he says into his phone suddenly, the professional veneer stripped away. "Call me back. Mom, for God's sake, call me." The name Mom is small and raw. It lands on the terrace like a dropped piece of silverware. In a family of power, the matriarch is both governor and judge. People watch him put his hopes for rescue in that call. They watch a public figure turn to a private god. Clara grabs at his sleeve, furious that her safety relies on the bank instead of his word. "Fix it," she hisses. "Fix it now." "How much?" Sophia asks, voice steady as ever. There is no performative rage in her. There is a simple arithmetic people in these rooms respect. You owe for what you took. Start with that. The bottle, the drinks, the lies. Ethan's eyes burn with a sudden incandescent panic. "I'll pay," he says. "A man who believes money hasn't failed him yet. Tell me the amount." "Do it publicly," Clara sneers. "Or maybe you'll just slide another private transfer and we'll all pretend this never happened." He opens a banking app, thumbs moving fast. On the screen, the account balances that once read like ocean depths now blink indecipherable messages. "Transaction failed. Account on hold. Contact your institution." Sophia watches him, and there is something small and precise that forms in her chest. It's not joy, not revenge, not yet. It is the acute focus of a person who has been wronged and is watching the scaffolding of deception unravel. "You had another life," she tells him softly. "You had a pattern. Tonight, the pattern broke in a room of witnesses." Ethan drops his head, fingers splayed across his face. The pose is private in a public place. "Sophia," he begins, and the word stops at the lip because he is looking for a way back into a narrative he co-authored with himself. The narrative where he is loved, where his excesses are forgiven, where his image remains intact. "Don't," Sophia says quickly, "don't give me that story." At her side, a small figure coughs, the slight, irregular sound of a child in the wings. The cough is not loud, but in a room of people whose noses are accustomed to grandeur, the cough cuts through like a needle. Sophia turns, and for an instant her eyes soften into something else, not the cool calculation of a woman ready with legal proof, but a mother with a worry in her throat. Clara notices it too, and the sight of a maternal beat leaks into the public theater and makes some people shift. Even the cameras tilt for a moment, as if to capture the humanizing pause. "Is that your child?" someone asks, and the question is both invasive and practical. The child, Lily, has her own quiet history. She was adopted into Sophia's life with all the fragile hope and urgent appointments that sometimes come with the territory. She was not part of the glitter tonight, but she is part of the truth. Ethan, distracted, glances at the child, and for a beat he looks like a man who would rather be anywhere else. "She's sick," Sophia says, before she can stop herself. She had not planned to use this edge, but when the air is charged and the truth needs a lever, any weight can act as one. "She needs a transfusion, a rare type. The operation is scheduled next week." The room goes still. Human sympathy is a quick and dangerous wind. People who had been cheering for spectacle now feel the thinness of their sport. Someone moves to comfort, others shift into calculation. In the economy of wealthy scandals, illness is both a private terror and a public lever. Clara's mouth twists. She tastes a moment where compassion would do more harm than good to her own headline. "Are you using your child?" she says coldly. "Is this a play for sympathy?" "No," Sophia says, voice low and iron hard. "It's a fact." Ethan's phone keeps buzzing. He looks hunted. He calls again, this time speaking into the silent hum. The words he uses are pleading, flayed. "Mom," he begs, voice small, "please, Sterling, call them. Don't." He hears a voice on the other end, measured, unreadable. Then he hears a single sentence that hits him like a verdict. "We will review the accounts," the woman says. "Until then, no transfers." His shoulders slump. The public facade that had once been the scaffold of his life is dissolving. The man who had been fearless in boardrooms and on stages now stands naked before a crowd that wants both his confession and his humiliation. Sophia watches him. The deed in her hand is heavy in a new way. It is not only paper. It is the threshold between having power and losing it. She looks down at Lily, small and coughing at the edge of the crowd, and feels the role of protector settle on her shoulders like duty. At the terrace entrance, the sound of a car pulling up breaks the taut silence. The kind of car that arrives at the right time does not creep. It announces itself with a door that opens like a scene cue. The guests turn. A hush falls so fast you can hear the servers holding their breath. They step outside to see the coach limo that carries Director Sterling. A woman emerges whose presence is both a law and an admonition. Even from a distance, she moves with the certainty of someone who has directed companies and people into corners and out again. She is the kind of figure whose entrance rewrites the room. Voices drop into a murmur at the name. Director Sterling looks at the gathered cluster, and then at Ethan. A single small nod like a judge hearing a case. Ethan meets her gaze, and, for the first time tonight, looks small. His mouth opens to form explanations, apologies, offers, things that used to sway a room. He reaches into his pockets as if to find the remedy in his wallet. For a breath, he is the most public man who ever thought he was private. Sophia steps back into shadow, the deed still folded in her palm. The night has rearranged itself. Proof has been given. A power play has been initiated. The bank's hold has made the private public. The matriarch's arrival promises an escalation. She feels something like cold resolve settle under her ribs. This is not the end. It is only the first unmasking. The deed had opened a door. Director Sterling closing in will not be a movie cheap ending. It will be complicated, full of attorneys and signatures and public records. And, Sophia knows, it will involve things she has not even thought to plan for. Someone shouts out the words she had planned to avoid, the headline that mirrors her worst fear and the audience's greatest appetite. Anniversary turned confrontation, someone says into the live mic, a voice that tastes the taste of someone who thought they could control every headline. If you want to see how he responds when it's all on the line, stick around, because what he does next will change everything. Director Sterling walks up the marble steps with the small, absolute silence of someone who knows the courthouse and the boardroom as the same map. Up close, she is a law in heels, sharp, economical, her eyes taking inventory with a single look. She is not surprised. She is precisely where she needs to be. "Good evening," she says. Her voice is slow and deliberate. It lands on Ethan like a verdict. "I'm Rosalind Sterling." The crowd recognizes the name now, the way a city recognizes an earthquake, the moment's surface tremor followed by 1,000 whispered checks. Ethan's face goes pale. A dozen cameras push closer, hungry for the tilt of a neck, a stutter that had once been smooth. "You're," Clara begins, indignation on the edge of scandal. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here because this property belongs to my daughter," the woman says. She looks at Sophia as if the two of them share not only blood but a ledger. And because someone apparently thought public theatrics could displace a legal record. A murmur like surf. People who had been certain about their seats now shuffle. Sterling does not need to raise her voice. She has a phone in her hand and an account of power that moves quicker than cameras. She taps the screen. "Hold all transfers on the Miller accounts," she says. Simple as that. "Contact the bank and the legal department. No transfers of more than $50,000 without my confirmation. Notify me if any assets are moved offshore." Ethan's skin loses another shade. "Roz," he starts, the attempt at casual familiarity leading him nowhere. "Call me Director," she corrects, and the casual familiarity evaporates like breath in winter. "You'll have lawyers involved. You'll have subpoenas. We'll cooperate. But no transfers, no payments, no private deals until this is resolved." Clara's jaw tightens. Her victory paused, then asked to prove itself. "You can't do that," she says, indignant. "You can't stop a man from giving money to his—" Her sentence shatters under the weight of Sterling's look. "You can try," Sterling replies, "but when the checks are written through a company account and the company's governance is under advisement, you discover there are limits." Ethan paces, the movement of a caged animal. He tries again to call his assistant, but the line is a chorus of unanswered attempts. His confidence was predicated on an open tap. Without it, the man becomes as humanly frightened as anyone else in the room. Cameras spin. A friend offers a weak joke about technical difficulties, and the joke dies because people are no longer laughing at a man they do not know anymore. They are recording a collapse. "Is this real?" someone asks into a phone mic. "Is she really his wife?" 1,000 feeds and faces want closure. Sophia, who has been quiet through the theater, simply watches. Her hands are steady. The deed sits in her clutch like an ember. Security, Sterling says, and it's an order. The security at the villa, who until moments ago were content to be invisible background in a curated life, stand into a new role, custodians of truth. They step forward with the practicality of people used to carrying weight and carrying out orders. At the edge of the terrace, Lily's cough grows, tiny and brittle. It is the sound that renders spectacle petty. Sophia feels it like a physical pain, hate for the attention that the room offers her, and a fierceness that is older than any paperwork. She turns and sees the child's small hand clamped around a stuffed rabbit, the fabric worn to a thread. "She's fine," Clara calls out, cool and cruel in a voice chosen to obfuscate. "It's probably allergies. People love jumping to extremes." "She's not fine," Sophia says. "The line is an axiom. She's scheduled for a transfusion next week. She needs a rare type. The prep is expensive. The hospital needs authorization." The terrace atmosphere shifts again. Even gossip has limits when a little body is involved. The cameras linger, and the comments oscillate between fury and sudden awkward concern. "You speak as if this is about money," Clara says, voice thinning. "You think money is the only reason parents do what they do? Is that what you believe? That family is currency?" "Money keeps hospitals open," Sophia replies, quiet, precise. "Tonight, the hospital called. They requested confirmation of funds for the procedure. I did not expect to have to confirm it from a terrace, but apparently some things are inconvenient." Clara's eyes glitter with something that's not just anger now. It's an economist's calculation of leverage. "What if we offered to help?" she says, a smile that doesn't touch her eyes. A dangerous offer that feels like a trap. The breeze lifts a strand of Sophia's hair, and she laughs, not for amusement. "Why would you help? To be seen? To have your name in a post saying we were noble?" Clara steps closer, the space between them a stage. "Because I was generous once," she says. "Because you, in a delivery uniform, humiliated my event. I will make a public gesture of charity if you sign a document relinquishing your claim to the villa. No fuss, no litigation. For the child." The terrace goes very quiet. The offer is a spear hidden in velvet. People lean in because they can't believe someone would use a child's life as barter in the middle of a party. Cameras cut in closer, red dots blinking. Sophia does not move. Her face is stoic, a line worn by women who have learned to weigh impossible options in private rooms long before anyone knew their name. "You are asking me to give up my home for my child's life," she says. "You would not be asking if you were decent. You would be asking if you were needed. This is extortion." The word lands with a different gravity to those who had been sure of their morals. Clara's associates whisper like a small, dangerous animal's pack. "It's negotiation," one says, but no one says extortion because no one wants to name what they have done. "Call the police," Sterling says calmly, and it's the action of someone with an index of righteous procedures in her pocket. No one negotiates a medical emergency in an empty-handed attempt to salvage social standing. If you have a legitimate offer, make it through proper channels. A server grabs his phone and dials. The movement flips the power dynamic. Two guests who had been gleeful are suddenly on edge because the law is being invoked where they had intended spectacle. Clara's smile flees. "You can't," she begins, and the syllables stop because reality has replaced the performance. At the same moment, a man in a navy suit with a clipboard sweeps forward. Ethan's lawyer, thin and efficient. He corners Ethan and whispers in a rush. Ethan's shoulders move like someone trying to hold back a storm. He looks at Sophia, at the child, at the woman who had just asked him in public why he was two people, and he feels something like an animal panic clawing at his ribs. "We can handle this," the lawyer says. "We can sign off partial funds, emergency release." "Not if Sterling says freeze," Sterling answers. "We must do this transparently." Ethan's breathing accelerates. "Do something," he says, voice small. "Please, I will do anything." The words are an invitation a predator can enter. Clara steps in with a hand offered like a deal-maker smoothing a contract. "We can expedite care," she says. "We have a private surgeon associated with an independent clinic downtown. We handle the payment discreetly. You sign the papers claiming you will not pursue legal action. You sign them now." The lawyers murmur. Someone in a suit offers a legal pad. "We could draft a binding agreement for a non-disparagement clause," he suggests, "for immediate transfer in exchange for a release." Sophia's eyes find Ethan's. There is disbelief there, pain, and a kind of test. "Is that who you are?" she asks him. "Asking me to barter my child's care with my home?" He has no answer. Comfort and convenience, once his allies, have vacated him. He reaches for his phone and tries to look like he is in control. "I will sign," he says abruptly, surprising everyone, his voice brittle. "I'll sign anything to get her help. Please." That sentence shifts the room in a way that will haunt him. Cameras record it. The feeds spike. People open their mouths to counsel, to condemn, to cheer. Sterling's jaw sets. "Don't sign anything without counsel," the lawyer says, but the words are both advice and a plea to slow a man who wants to fix everything with a pen. Ethan shoves the papers toward Sophia even as his lawyer hisses, "Wait." He names the document, consent, but the words blur. Under boiled lights and shadowed intent, he feels his life unspooling into one desperate motion, a signature. Sophia stares at the pages, at the pre-printed language that would surrender rights she never wanted to gamble. Her hand trembles. Lily coughs again, smaller, like a sign of an urgent clock. "You can't do this," Sterling says sharply, stepping in between the men and the child. Her voice is a chain-link fence. It defines boundaries with steel. No one signs away parental rights under duress. Any paper signed under threat of harm is void. If you attempt to coerce, we will press charges. The words are both legal and moral. The crowd exhales with them. Some are relieved, some are furious at the unraveling of their amusement. Clara's face hardens into something like hate when she realizes the theater she planned has been interrupted by a different kind of authority. But the night has momentum. Ethan is already guilty of 1,000 small betrayals in his mind. The idea that the signature could undo one of his worst fears, letting the child fight a hospital delay because he refused to act, becomes a siren. He grabs a pen and signs where the line is waiting. It is quick, and it is a kind of defeat. "Done," he says. The word is both a covenant and a broken thing. The camera captures the flourish of ink, the hand that used to give bonuses now committing itself to a desperate fix. Applause dies halfway. Clara takes the paper and folds it like a prize. "We will take her now," she says, voice honeyed. "A private clinic. Best team. You'll get updates." But Sterling's hand is on the papers before Clara can step away. "No," she says. "You will not take this child without medical clearance and a chain of custody. You're not an authorized guardian. Someone call the paramedics." A woman in a sequin dress, more frightened than she would have admitted an hour ago, hits the villa's private emergency line. Within 10 minutes, an ambulance is at the gate. Men in EMS uniforms move with the single efficiency of people whose job is to move a human across a threshold into care. Clara tries to step toward the stretcher, phone in hand, hygienic compassion painted across her face. "I just want to help," she says, but no one believes her. The paramedics, trained to scan for coercion, look at the adults and then at Sophia. "Who is the legal guardian?" the lead tech asks. The question is practical and a blade. "Miss Chen," Sterling answers immediately. "Her mother and legal guardian will authorize." Sophia watches the child being carried out on a stretcher, blankets tucked, a rabbit clutched. It is an odd kind of relief to watch professionals take over something that had been tormenting her. But the relief is small and cold because of the papers already signed. Ethan's signature sits in ink like a fossil of panic. In the ambulance, Lily's small face is pale but steady. The paramedic reads off vitals and asks a list of standard questions. They fasten an IV and race to the nearest hospital with a pediatric blood bank. The siren cuts through the wealthy night's echo like a truth bell. Back at the villa, the crowd disperses in clusters, some to post, some to whisper. Directors and lawyers assemble. Sterling pulls Ethan aside with the quiet, predatory patience of someone who will not be flattered. "You should have told her," she says, low, not as a mother, but as an executive delivering a reprimand. "You have a duty. She is not an accessory." Ethan's shoulders shake, and now the cameras do not frame him as an object of envy. They frame him as an embarrassed human. He kneels, uncharacteristic in every way, but utterly human, at Sophia's feet. The act is raw. The terrace, recently a stage, suddenly becomes a place of supplication. "Sophia," he says, voice cracked, "please, please forgive me. I'll make it right. I'll give everything back. Don't," Sophia says. The word is a small, carefully placed stone. She does not raise her voice. People inch back, the mics picking up the intimacy of her refusal. "Don't offer me your money as an apology. Don't give me your transactions as proof of feeling. You gave me years of absence and a life performed for others." He reaches up and grabs the hem of her sleeve as if to anchor himself. "I'll sign whatever," he says, frantic. "Divorce, transfer, anything. Just let me help Lily." The plea is primitive and urgent. Cameras are merciless. The feeds blow up with comments. "He signed it? This is horrible. Who is Sterling?" The public watches a man reduce himself. Sterling steps forward. "We will not allow him to exploit a child to erase responsibility," she says. "Any documents signed under the threat of harm will be reviewed. Our lawyers will ensure Lily's care. I have already authorized immediate payments to the hospital from an escrow we maintain for family emergencies." A dozen gasps go out like flurries. The image of power shifts again. The matriarch is both protective and precise. "We will also request a full accounting of Mr. Miller's transfers and gifts," she continues. "If criminal activity is discovered, it will be referred to the authorities." Ethan's hands close like fists. "You can't do this," he says, the line between command and plea thinner than ever. "You can't strip me of my company." "This is not about stripping," Sterling replies. "This is about accountability. You either answer for your choices, or the law will help us document them." The terrace unfolds into a scene of legal choreography. Calls made, documents requested, a subpoena already swimming in the background of the night. Someone records every second, thinking of headlines and ad clicks and the carnivorous appetite of viewers. As the ambulance pulls away, cameras blink and a live update spreads. Child taken to hospital, Director Sterling asserts control, assets on hold. The feeds surge. Ethan's image, blue and reeling, becomes the face of a cautionary tale. Hours later, in a sterile hospital waiting room where coffee machines hum like confessors, Sophia sits with Sterling and a team of lawyers. They make lists that are precise and necessary: medical authorizations, insurance numbers, an inventory of assets, and the list of transfers Ethan will be asked to account for. The lawyers move like chess players. They are not cruel, they are industrious. At 2:14 a.m., the lead pediatric surgeon comes out with a face that is trained to hold both hope and cold fact. "We were able to stabilize her," he says. "We have a donor for a compatible transfusion. We'll proceed. We cannot give guarantees, but the immediate risk has passed. The transfusion will take a few hours, and then we will monitor." Sophia breathes as if someone has let the air back into a bellows. Sterling reaches over and squeezes her hand with a compression that is both maternal and managerial. "You did the right thing bringing this evidence to light tonight," she says simply. "We will pursue what is necessary." The next day erupts like a storm that began with a single ripple. Social media is an omnivorous beast. Clips of Ethan's voice threads, Sophia at the door with a cake box, Clara's teeth-bared laughing, the deed held up like a flag, all circulate with 1,000 captions. The city's tabloids repaint the terrace in their own colors. People tag friends. Some are scandalized. Some are thrilled. Investigations begin. Banks respond to Sterling's calls and notice the pattern. A series of transfers from corporate expense accounts to private accounts with descriptions like consulting, gifts, and personal. Some transfers are large, some are small, but the pattern is the kind of thing forensic accountants like because it is messy and revealing. Mr. Evans provides documentation from the properties register. His file is meticulous. The registration dates correspond. The deed is indeed Sophia's. Evidence, once it has witnesses, becomes stubborn. Clara and Sarah feel the ground shift under the carefully curated shoes of their social life. They attempt to spin, statements to press, private messages pleading for privacy. But the case moves quicker than their damage control. Old messages leak. A few screenshots show payments from accounts tied to Ethan's name to accounts identified with Clara's middle name. The internet loves a visual, and a transfer receipt makes a visual. The police quietly file for interviews. Sterling's legal counsel requests an audit. They do not cry victory, they methodically lay out a case. "We are seeking full disclosure," her lawyer tells the press at 11 a.m., voice even. "No one is above the law." Ethan's world narrows. The power calls he once made no longer open doors. Board members call to express deep concern, a euphemism for either a cautious removal or a demand for clarity. His assistant, who used to answer the phone like a concierge, looks at him with a new face, one that registers betrayal and fear. He tries to make amends the way he'd always been taught: gift, transfer, public gesture. It fails. The bank's hold is airtight. His accounts read like a desert to a man who had been used to tide. He tries wire after wire, but every app returns a polite rejection or an icy message, "Transaction on hold pending verification." Cornered by the obviousness of his choices, he does something neither elegant nor strategic. He goes on camera. Not a staged set, he posts a rambling live video, eyes bloodshot, voice unsteady. "I messed up," he says, words stumbling. I've made mistakes. I never meant... Clara, I'm sorry. Sophia, please." It is meant to be contrition, to be humanizing. Instead, it becomes an unfiltered collapse. People rewind. The clips mercilessly splice the "I messed up" with his earlier recorded laughter on Clara's line. Tweets smear it with captions. The public is merciless in real time. Sophia watches the video once, twice, then closes her laptop. She has what she needs, an admission that once would have been private, now broadcast. But she also has the larger problem of her daughter's medical bills, the proper assertion of ownership, and the future of her company, which might be targeted by opportunists smelling vulnerability. Weeks unspool into a tedious legal blur. Sterling's team files suit where necessary. Auditors open ledgers men haven't touched for months. Some of Ethan's allies begin to distance themselves, in the soft way of people who preserve reputations. Clara and Sarah hire PR firms. Bitter messages exchange hands. People attempt to monetize the pain in the small ways that modern life allows. Interviews, exclusive photos, statements behind paywalls. There are arrests, small, precise, evidence-based. A young man who handled transfers for Ethan is taken in for questioning when a paper trail shows funds routing through accounts he managed to a shell in a neighboring country. He is released on bail with instructions and a promise of a further hearing. But the first step is taken.
The law is moving with teeth, not just wringing hands. Clara and Sarah are subpoenaed after messages show them discussing what to do in late-night texts. They claim innocence, and there is a theater of statements and denials. The cameras devour it all.
Through it, Ethan's regret grows like a public wound, exposed to view and to satellite-level commentary. He attends meetings where his name is spoken with a ledger's precision. He volunteers for interviews where he flinches when people use the word consequence like a hammer. He tries to reconstruct whatever dignity he can, donations to hospitals, press statements, but the moves look performative on feeds that had already decided the narrative. One afternoon, when the feeds have moved on and the legal team has arranged a meeting under sterile fluorescent lights, Ethan shows up at Sophia's office. He is not wearing the armor of suits he once favored. His jacket hangs too loosely, as if the fabric is reluctant to be associated with him. He stands by the door like someone who has come to deliver something and to ask for mercy that cannot be given. "Sophia," he starts, and the word is both plea and attempt at reconciliation. "Please, I want to help. I'll sign anything. I'll give you back the villa. I'll surrender my shares. I'll leave. Just let me see Lily." Her office is a clean space, the kind that professional women build not to boast but to work. There are children's drawings pinned to a board, Lily's scribbles, and a small plant that ironically seems to be the only domestic touch. Sophia does not stand when he enters. She does not invite him to sit. She has learned to put structure around her interactions with a man who had performed affection like a consultant. "Your signatures are on documents already," she says, and the words are flat. "They will be examined. Anything executed under duress." "I'm not asking for leniency," he interrupts, his voice choking on the words. "I'm asking for a choice. I will sign whatever you need. I will do anything you want. Take my company, my house. I'll go. Just—" "You could have been honest," she says, "and we wouldn't be here. You could have chosen to stop. You chose to hide and to lie." He bows his head, the posture of a man used to commanding rooms reduced to a smaller geometry, where his gestures are useless. "I thought I could keep you and keep her," he admits. "I thought I could have both. I was wrong." "Both," Sophia repeats. "What you had was a map of convenience. You numbered the boxes and assigned values to people. You turned love into currency." He flinches as if struck. He tries to form the apology that would be adequate, but there is no adequate apology for what he did. His regret is not a sentence. It is a long, raw unspooling of the fact that he is lonely and had used people to avoid that. He does something that is both unexpected and almost unbearably small. He kneels in front of Sophia in the center of her office. It is not theatrical. If anything, the gesture is raw and private all at once. Cameras would have eaten it alive if they were there. In this room, it is intimate. "Forgive me," he says simply, the words stripped of any management speak. "Please, give me a chance to be a man who does better." Sophia's expression is unreadable for a long, slow beat. Then she steps back and looks at him with the kind of pity that does not cross into mercy because it must be measured. "Forgiveness is not a free pass," she says. "You are asking me to normalize what you normalized. I will protect my child. I will protect my property. I will not be compassionate to your ego." He cries then, a sound that is more like a child than a CEO. It's the kind of scene tabloids salivate over, the powerful humbled. But it is not the story he likely wanted. It is a raw human moment that the internet will later clip and spin into 1,000 narratives. Sterling walks in then, and for the first time all night, the matriarch's face shows a private anger leaned into public form. "There will be a legal process," she says. "We will seek restitution where applicable.
There will be interviews, there will be hearings. If the funds were misappropriated, you will face consequences. Ethan's shoulders shake. Please, he says, anything. Anything has a cost, Sterling answers, and that cost cannot be measured in signature lines you try to pawn off as repentance. Legal consequences roll forward over the coming months. Shareholders convene. A board meeting calls for his temporary leave. Investigations find discrepancies in expense accounts and transfers to private contractors associated with Clara. The prosecutors call in forensic accountants. A case is made public. Misuse of company funds, potential conflicts of interest, and fraudulent transfers under investigation. Ethan is hauled into a meeting where men in suits ask questions he cannot make disappear. He is stripped of titles he had once used like names. Clara and Sarah attempt to flee the glare. Miranda warnings are read in a room thick with perfume and panic. They deny wrongdoing at first. Then messages and bank statements prove a pattern. Gifts, transfers, receipts labeled for event expenses that lead to accounts in their names. It's not all illegal in the technical sense. Some are personal transfers, but the optics are damning. Their social standing crumbles. Invitations stop coming. Sponsors become quiet. At a hearing, when cameras are allowed into part of the public corridor, Ethan is asked if he misused company funds. He answers, "I made bad choices," and the phrase is both confession and infuriatingly vague. The prosecutor asks for specifics. The board votes to freeze more assets pending audit. The company's stock drops. People ask how a man who appeared so polished could have such loose financial boundaries. The answer is not elegant: greed and the belief that power insulates from consequence. In a quieter scene, Sophia signs legal documents to assert her ownership. She is both strategic and humane. She will press for custody protections and legal barriers to ensure Lily's well-being, but she will not weaponize the child beyond necessary protection.
She refuses interviews that would turn the child into a spectacle. Her mother, Sterling, ensures the legal team arranges for both recovery costs and a trust that secures Lily's future independent of Ethan's fortunes. It's a slow, steady sort of justice. The child recovers, slow and steady. The transfusion works. Lily wakes from sedation like a tiny warrior, blinking and stunned. Sophia sits at her bedside and breathes in the way women who have been awake all night do. Small, economical breaths. Sterling sits in a chair across from the bed and watches with the kind of watchfulness a matriarch keeps when a family is being rebuilt. Ethan gets his moment at the hospital too, after pleading for permission to see Lily. Sophia allows a brief visit, controlled and supervised, because she is not cruel. But the visit is a final, intimate act of humiliation and pleading. Ethan takes Lily's small hand like a man who has been taught real love too late. "I'm sorry," he whispers, voice raw. "I didn't know how to be anything but the man I had become." Lily looks at him with the clear-eyed honesty of a child and then returns to her stuffed rabbit. The doctor's instructions restrain the visit to minutes. Sophia watches them. An emotion like an old wound and a bright new armor cross her face. She does not say, "Forgive him." She says instead, "Protect our daughter." And that sentence is both a legal instruction and a moral limit. Months later, the fallout is a geography of losses and small recoveries. Ethan steps down as CEO pending investigation and later reaches a settlement that includes relinquishing certain assets and restrictive covenants that keep him from returning to the executive suite for a defined period. He loses his place in the city's salons, the polite dinners that used to smooth his ego. He keeps what legal processes allow, but the person who once commanded rooms now gives speeches to smaller groups about lessons learned with a sincerity that tastes like penance. Clara and Sarah face charges of extortion and conspiracy in the narrower case brought by the prosecutor who found the texts and the pressure points. The law does not shrug at the idea of using a child as leverage. The trial is messy and public.
They plead guilty to lesser counts, receive fines and community service, and watch their social spheres contract. The cameras follow them into courtrooms. They pay the price in reputational exile. Sophia reclaims more than property. She reclaims her narrative. With Sterling's support, she launches a foundation for pediatric care for families with rare blood types, partly to ensure that no one else must barter with dignity to save a child's life. The foundation is practical and modest, administers grants to small hospitals, and funds registries for rare donors. It is not showy, it is sensible. The city notices, initially with clicks, later with a muted respect. Ethan's regret becomes public ritual.
He is photographed signing papers in a courthouse and bearing his face in interviews that are measured and awkward. He writes op-eds about failing systems of accountability in corporate culture and the cost of charisma unmoored from conscience. Many see his pieces as performative. Some see them as a man attempting repair. The truth lives somewhere between both things, a man reduced to apology and some sincere attempt to make amends. One night, months after the party that changed everything, Ethan stands outside Sophia's office building. He has no reason to be there, except that some parts of regret insist on ritual. He holds a small envelope, not the expensive cases of gifts that used to arrive on other people's doorsteps, but a single humble gesture. A small check for a donation to the Trust for Lily's medical needs, written from funds he somehow still has access to, transferred under the constraints of the board and Sterling's oversight. He knocks. Sophia answers. For an instant, the weight of the past fills the doorway like a tidal breath. He looks at her and speaks with the old pleading softness. "I'm sorry," he says. The word has teeth now. It is hard-won. He does not ask for forgiveness. He asks for space. She accepts the envelope without looking at his face. "Lily needs stability," she says. "Anything you do for her should be direct and without spectacle." He nods, then finally steps away. The man who once commanded rooms now walks alone, his regret for all the world to see, but useless as a currency when the trust has been recalculated. The city moves on, the feeds find new outrages, and yet the echoes of that anniversary linger in smaller lives. In Lily's laughter as she slowly returns to normal. In the way Sophia answers phones now with the calm of a woman who has had to defend her life in public. In Sterling's careful, unglamorous phone calls that arrange medical help for others who turn up at an office needing counsel. The final reckoning is not cinematic vengeance, but it is thorough. Ethan pays fines, agrees to avoid executive roles for a time, and undergoes therapy and public education on accountability. Clara and Sarah pay fines and perform community service. Their social calendars empty. Sterling returns to her director's chair with a colder smile. She has protected her daughter and taught the city a lesson about the limits of performative power. Sophia emerges as both wounded and authoritative, a woman who walked through humiliation and walked out with both a deed and a plan. They all live differently after that night. None of them walks away untouched. The lesson that betrayal costs everyone plays out not in a single headline, but in a slow recalibration. Friendships fray, fortunes shift, small acts of kindness become the scaffolding for a future that is less dependent on performance and more on truth. And Ethan? His regret is not a single viral clip or a perfunctory apology. It is a daily thing. He washes the dishes in the small apartment he moves to after the company's sale. He is not the only one forced into smallness. Truth compels it. Sometimes, in the early evening, he sits on a bench by a park and watches a woman and child pass by, an ordinary tableau. He remembers the anniversary banner, the glittery terrace, the sound of another woman's laughter threaded through his voice. He has lost the stage. He has the memory and the weight of what he chose. On a quieter morning, he sends a message to Sophia, not pleading, not performative, just businesslike. "I will cooperate with whatever is required. I am sorry." She reads it and replies once, "Protect our child." Spare, direct, irrevocable. The city continues to spin, full of people who will always try to have both things at once: love and performance, ownership and secrecy. But on anniversaries, when parties are arranged and banners unfurled, Sophia pinches a line quietly. The memory of a cake box in a staff door, the sound of a laugh that did not belong to the room, a deed folded in a pocket like proof that truth sometimes needs witnesses. She makes donations in Lily's name. She runs her business with a steady, unspectacular competence. She refuses interviews that would make her child's recovery part of a spectacle. The final image is small, domestic, and perfectly human. Lily at a sunlit kitchen table drawing a picture of a house. Sophia sits across from her, watching the strokes. The house is simple and solid. If you look closely, the drawing has a tiny heart on the front door and a small figure waving from the window. Sophia smiles, not to be seen, but because she is present to see. The camera of life closes on that quiet resilience. On an anniversary that began with fairy lights and a satin banner, a wife discovered her husband's affair. What followed was not just a scandal, it was a dismantling of a life of performance, a legal reckoning, a child's scare, and a public fall that stripped a man of his pedestal. His regret, public, raw, and insistent, was not a tweet or a single tear on camera. It was the slow, steady unmaking of a life built on illusions and the daily work of trying to make amends where amends could be made. If you want more dramatic, true-to-life stories that cut beneath the surface and show what happens after the cameras stop, subscribe for more.